Hey guys, Stephen here, Fanatic Perspective. I have my good friend on here, Mr. Colin Camphy, and we go, we're connected just the Texas circle and our good friends in Austin, our buddy Austin, our buddy Mike Smee, everybody out there. So shout out to the boys. And but Colin and I, we've connected and we talk ball every week, every day almost, whether it's recruiting, Texas basketball, Texas football, the whole bit. Colin, thanks for coming on, man. It's exciting to talk to a friend off Fanatic Perspective.
Yeah, man. Well, I appreciate you having me, and I feel like it's been way overdue. Can't give you too much credit though. Going back to our fantasy football league, the standings right now are Colin and Steve. So I think we need to close that gap a little bit. But no, looking forward to talking basketball, talking football, and kind of getting into it with you.
Indeed, indeed. And we're going to talk Texas men's basketball today as they tipped off last night. We're recording this on Tuesday, November 8th, but they tipped off last night the inaugural game at the Moody Center, official game. We know they had some exhibitions and whatnot, but the official opener against UTEP, where they were victorious 72-57. And then we're going to talk our big game this week, Texas versus TCU. As of right now, we do not have the updated playoff standings haven't dropped just yet. So stay tuned for that. But we will be getting into, all of those things and just predictions and projections and so forth. So, hey, it's free to show love. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe. We're trying to grow the platform. Fellow fans like myself, like Colin, just exciting times on the 40. Colin, as of right now, speaking of exciting times, we just got some good news via recruiting, correct?
We did, yeah. Colton's staying home. Very exciting. We'll probably get into it a little bit later, but edge is a position that we go back and forth with almost every week in terms of what we need some improvements on. So it's nice to have the local kids stay home.
Absolutely, absolutely. So big get. Colin Vasek is now, reuniting with Ethan Burke, the Bash brothers of Westlake. Flipping from Oklahoma. So while OU and Texas A&M are struggling out here, Steve Sarkisian and his staff looking to take advantage against foes that we recruit against, other kids, Anthony Hill decommits, a lot of other guys. It's been exciting early week coming off the road victory over Kansas State. Before we get into basketball, I want to give a quick shout out to, the official sports book, the official betting partner of Fanatic Perspective, busr.com/fanatic. Hit that promo code sports100FP. Guys, we're matching up to $2,500 on all initial deposits within the first 24 hours. Your boy hit on a plus 2,400 parlay in college football. Did some NBA betting last night. I was at the NBA game, the Mavs-Nets game last night. All 30 teams played in the league last night. So while I was consuming NBA ball up here in Dallas, my boy Colin was down at the Moody Center seeing the men's tip-off. So, guys, if you're looking for betting partners, if you're looking to bet college basketball, TCU was in a dogfight last night. OU lost. You could have put some money in on BOSR looking for a reliable betting partner 24/7, BOSR.com/fanatic. Colin, first question for you. What was it like in the atmosphere last night? It looked electric on Twitter, man.
Yeah, I think it was just really exciting to get the building really opened up for the first official men's game. A lot of folks kind of went over the exhibition game against Arkansas, which, winning by 30 against the Pigs is always exciting, but to really actually, get the Moody Center tipped off, really get the students down around the court, I think was the most exciting thing. I think when most folks, attended the University of Texas, like I did, was very Irwin center based, where you're kind of behind the baskets, but to really have the students kind of down there, like at a Duke, like at a Carolina, really the UTEP coach touched on it afterwards. He said that this is a real college basketball arena now, unlike kind of what the Irwin Center was. So it was really just an electric kind of atmosphere for the students, for the team, and it really feels kind of a lot more intimate relative to kind of
Absolutely. You
like the
want an
Irwin
intimate
Center was
setting.
as
You want an intimate setting in college basketball.
exactly rather than more of kind of a concert venue based center. So it was really great to one tip it off and kind of get the win. A lot of interesting new talent on the team as well that we can kind of get into. So speaking of your sponsor, Vegas had those lines kind of set at I think it was minus 22.5 for us. So we didn't cover the score, but the total was right around 129, 129.5. So they were kind of spot on there as well. But a really interesting game kind of throughout.
So I know we started off, it sounded like we were pretty rusty to start out. We got some new guys on there, especially I would say a new floor general in Tyrese Hunter. We know Marcus Carr is still there, but Marcus Carr making more of a transition to maybe more of a natural role off ball. And Tyrese.
Obviously, Marcus was still around. There really wasn't a guy who could kind of run the offense. Ultimately, that's what Tyrese Hunter brings to the team. So quickly his stat line, 18, 5 and 1. But that assist number, I don't think should have really showed what he did kind of on the court. Ultimately, he is the guy bringing the ball up and allowing Marcus to kind of play off the ball and kind of get the shots that he wants, which I think will allow him to be a lot more efficient. He wasn't as efficient as maybe most people expected him to be last night, but I don't think the team as a whole was as efficient as most people kind of thought they would be last night. And I think a lot of that has to do with opening the building up, new arena, bright lights, all the fans around, the students around there, wanting to get everybody kind of hyped up. Ultimately, as a basketball player, it takes some time to kind of settle into that new arena. And then, secondly, the difference between, 21 and 22 and kind of the need was rim protection. And so, you look at a Dylan Mitchell who is just extremely springy, already to your point, probably an NBA ready athlete. And then really getting Dylan healthy from kind of, coming off of his injury in 2020, transferring here in 21, playing limited minutes, playing really kind of not at 100%. He really came into the game and it'll be a good thing to have both of them, later on in the year. When you look at the tournament game against, Zach Edey last year, we got absolutely destroyed on the boards. So that will be big kind of going into non-conference this year and kind of throughout. We have Gonzaga coming up next Wednesday, so we'll have that first test in the Moody Center already.
Drew Timmy's old ass still there, isn't he?
Mm-hmm. He is.
Mm-hmm. So I have a question, and I'm thinking about this as you're talking because the rim protection thing. I brought this up, to my buddy BK who was on with me last year that did this basketball preview with us. Shout out to Brad Kellner over in Houston and the Strohs and the coverage he was doing.
Yeah. Brad and I were the same year at Texas together. So we
awesome.
know each other well.
Small world, right? And so I brought this up to BK and he agreed with me because, he loves his Kansas Jayhawks as well. And I told him, I said, look, there's some teams out there, while it's not something that will be exploited on a nightly basis or on a matchup by matchup basis, it is an issue in terms of that size, that rim protection, even that interior rebounding, just that ability to dominate space or control the space around the cup. And we saw that was an issue with the David McCormicks of the world last year, the Zach Edeys of the world. And that was something where it needed to be addressed. And I know Chris Beard really, really, really tried to do his best, but I feel like Dylan Dessou is one of the most underrated, important players that I don't think a whole lot of people are talking about and I'm glad you emphasized his health and him starting to look more like the player we thought we were going to get from Vanderbilt, right? When he was healthy and a 15-10 type guy who could play inside and out. Did you see in terms of, I know everybody wasn't sharp last night, but what did you see in terms of his movement? Does he look healthier or do you still see him still trying to find his legs?
Yeah, it's I think it's a little bit of the latter. I think the first half was him trying to work himself I think this is everybody, but him specifically trying to work himself into the game. He didn't really post up that well in the first half and really wasn't rewarded for it as he shouldn't be. There's actually a few turnovers off of that. The second half, I think he actually held his ground on his post ups a little bit more, and then he got rewarded for it. I think of his 10 points, I want to say 8 of those were in the second half,
Okay.
and I want to say 6 of those were him, finding good post position, kind of receiving the ball and going up and finishing like he should. And the other one was, I think, him coming down on a fast break. So ultimately, one of the other big things for this team is pace of play. They put the graphic up on their last night. I think Beard's teams in the last 3 years were ranked in the 300 of like pace of play in terms of college basketball. And I know that this is a point of emphasis for the team this year, because the way that they were getting out, finding Tyrese and having kind of a fast break ran is significantly different than really anything over the last year, and really a lot from maybe the Beard teams in the past as well.
It's interesting because Beard has such a well-respected defensive blueprint in the college basketball community. And I think people also associate that with the success that he's had in the NCAA tournament, specifically at Texas Tech. I don't want them to overcorrect, because I understand with pace, you lose some of that ability to control the game on the other end. However, we talk about the athletes we have and the pieces you have and the ability to be explosive. I would like to see Texas try to open up some games more. I think they have opportunities when presented to blow some teams out, right? And really, really, overwhelm some people on the open floor just with their athleticism, especially when your weakness is still going to be in that interior against some opponents. We want to be able to get out and one. We want to be able to make them uncomfortable having a guard in space. So I'm glad that they're trying to emphasize that more. Where do you think we're at with the shooting element of this? Who's going to help me there? Because that's the other big proponent that has been a problem at Texas basketball now for several years, I think.
Yeah, well, I think the last true, shooter we had was probably AJ Abrams, and shout out to Round Rock, Texas, where I grew up. I got to play open gym against him, and that guy had a burner. And so, really, since then, I don't really think we've had a guy that can shoot that well. When you look at this team, adding Arterio Morris is a big up on the shooting. Ultimately, he was 1 for 3 last night. Is that a great showing? No, but we're not expecting him to be a Steph Curry and shoot 40+%. Serge Rice, an improvement from shooting as well, 2 for 3 from deep last night. And then ultimately you need Marcus and Tyrese to hit shots. And so, Marcus was 0 for 4. Tyrese was 1 for 3. I think that again comes down to it's opening the building up. It's, kind of the bright lights the first game. And as well, UTEP is a good defensive team. This is a team that went up and beat, Texas Tech in an exhibition game. They're super physical. They played up until, the refs made them basically, call foul. They're pushing guys out of their screens. They're pushing guys away from the basket. They were displacing, Dylan on a lot of his post ups. They were displacing Timmy on a lot of his post ups and kind of the one-on-one game that he has. But ultimately, we need to get guys kind of going downhill for those easy threes. That's what we did against Arkansas. That's why we kind of, were able to shoot the lights out of the ball. It's a lot easier to shoot when you're wide open. And I think we have the guys to create that kind of offense, rather than, maybe last year where you looked at it and, it was Andrew or Courtney having to, or Marcus having to jack a shot at the end of the shot clock because we didn't do anything. And maybe your point earlier on in terms of, pace of play and kind of the Beard kind of defensive mentality, they're still going to have that defensive mentality. As long as Chris Beard's the coach, like that's going to be the foundational element of the basketball team. What I think that, ultimately pushing the ball up the floor adds is, if you're going to work so hard on the defensive end of the floor to get a stop, and then allow the other team to go set up their defense on the other side of the floor, whether it's a Texas Tech, whether it's a Baylor, whether it's a KU. They have just as good of athletes and just as good defensive schemes as we do. And so you're just basically playing kind of a stalemate chess match. Unfortunately, when you look at kind of, last year's team, we didn't have the same scorers as a Baylor or KU or, a Texas Tech, which is why we lost those games. So adding that kind of element of pushing the ball off the floor and getting easy buckets will be kind of an improvement for our offense, I think, going into this year.
You want to make scorers guard you too, right? And Baylor and
Right.
those teams, those guys at times really didn't have to work a whole hell of a lot defensively, just with how we were playing or the pace we were playing, or we don't have anybody really going off to where they have to allocate resources or start chasing guys or start doing things out of character, utilizing energy on that side so they can, then go and empty the clip on the other end. You want to make scores guard you. I've always maintained that throughout any level of basketball. So that's important for Texas. The last question I have is about Timmy Allen, who at times was, I thought, such a terrific player. And, you made the comment about, we were talking off screen about Sir Jabari Rice and his YMCA game. I love that comment you made.
Yeah.
And I think as a hooper, you have an affinity for Sir Jabari, just watching him play. But I feel the same way about Timmy Allen and his old man game. Is there so shout out to Keenan Womack, who's the lead writer for the Longhorns and over at Orange Plus. He does great work. And
OB. Keenan
will be on here throughout the season. I'll probably get y'all on here together, just talking a little hoops roundtable. But Keenan has talked and reported about Timmy possibly expanding his range, or the importance on being able to not just shoot out the mid post or work out the mid post, but also from a spacing standpoint. Hey, you're going to have to hit some threes, big fella, or at least be able to be a threat from there to open up some space. What are your thoughts there on Timmy? And overall, just what you want to see, Colin, what your preference is from how this team should play.
Yeah, when you look at a Timmy Allen, you kind of look at his game last year, to your point, was, basically kind of full mid-range, every once in a while a three, and really getting down there and grinding down low, having, multiple and ones throughout the year. He's a strong guy. I think the downside of his game is his size, right? When you look at him, he's not 6'8", he's not 6'10". Like when you go down there and you try to body with some of those larger guys, like you're not going to be able to finish through a Baycott at Carolina. You're not going to be able to finish through a David McCormick as easily. And so when you look at Timmy Allen's game, ultimately what I hope he could be, and this may be a stretch, but looking back at an old Iowa State team, is George Niang, right? A guy who can handle the ball, a guy who can kind of facilitate, and a guy who can go get you a bucket when you need it. Whether it is a three, whether it's a mid range, or whether it's kind of getting to the rack. Ultimately, what that does is only open up Tyrese, only opens up Marcus, only opens up lobs to Dylan Mitchell, because guys are going to have to start sending doubles. And if Timmy can kind of take that responsibility on as a playmaker, more towards a George Niang level than maybe last year, not saying he has the same skill set, I think that really puts this team within probably the top 8 basketball teams collegiately, kind of within the nation. I think they have the talent. I think they have the experience, which is huge. Watching the exhibition versus Arkansas, it was blatantly obvious they were starting 3 freshmen, I think, playing more off the bench. Having a guy like Marcus, having a guy like Timmy Allen, having Sir Jabari Rice with multiple years of collegiate experience. Once you get past that regular season, that ultimately is what's going to take you to the Final Four, hopefully, and beyond. So, to be a leader, to be a facilitator, and kind of continue to work on his game where he can kind of be a leader off the offense, maybe with Tyrese, like George Niang was at Iowa State when he was there.
So the last point on basketball I want to touch on is actually what you just said. Hey, if I get in great comp, by the way, on Timmy Allen, I hadn't thought about that, but I really, really like that. And I don't think that's a stretch in terms of what we have seen from Timmy over the years, even going back to Utah. I think that's somewhere in
Yep.
him, but there's also, and this goes for the whole team, Colin, consistency. I have a
Right.
problem when Timmy Allen goes to Lubbock, Texas, and has 2 points coming off of
Yeah.
when he's in the Kansas game and he looks all world. He looks like
Right.
a first team all Big 12 player against Kansas. So to me, it's also like, hey, what you look like on Big Monday, I need that same energy on Thursday. I need that same energy on Saturday, bro. Because that's the difference between like a Baji, right? Where he got to the point at Kansas where he developed into a floor. He had a floor as a player of production
Yep.
that they knew they were going to get from him. And for me, I think the skill set is there for Timmy. He can a lot of guys today in today's game can expand range, but having the ability to do everything and be consistently aggressive for him. Sometimes I
Right.
forget Timmy's on the floor because he's just chilling,
Yeah.
and so that consistent aggression. But my point is, you mentioned if we can get to those things, if some of those people can get there, you just said we're in the top 8. And I agree with you in terms of the ability of this team. And once you're in the 8, anything can happen. Injuries, all luck,
Right.
luck of, you get hot, you get a hot shooter, whatever. But you want to get
Yep.
yourself in those positions. I actually think last year we could have made it that far. Purdue was a terrible matchup for this team.
Horrible matchup.
Horrible matchup, especially when you had Jaden Ivey in the guards. Like that was too much.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Not only did we have a mismatch in the post, but they also had the best player on the floor in an already starting Jaden Ivey for the Pistons. It was, and he made those shots down the stretch, right? Like ultimately, we were in that game until the
we
very end,
battled.
and he made more shots than we did. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
my thing though is maybe a little bit better seed, right? Maybe you get up. We were a 6 seed last year, correct?
Yeah.
And look, matchups are matchups, but if Texas can get themselves to where we're talking about that 3 seed area and above, I think this team, I think to me, that should be the expectation from this roster with the experience they have, with the necessary youth that's been added. I still have questions about the shooting. I'm always going to have questions about the shooting. The bigs will go as Dessou goes, will go as Bishop goes. But everything else
Yep.
to me, with in combination with the coaching, is there, Colin.
Right.
I don't understand why our expectations shouldn't be at least getting that 3 seed and trying to pursue Sweet 16 elite. I honestly think they have the potential to be an Elite 8 team. What are your expectations? And we can switch over to football after this.
Yeah. So I think they're the third lowest odds to win the Big 12 right now. So it's KU, Baylor, and then Texas with Tech after that and TCU after that. The conference is going to be a grind. I think everybody knows that for basketball season. The Big 12 does it differently than everybody else, where you need to go play them at their place and they need to come play you at your place. Ultimately, you need to win those home games, right? And I think changing from the Irwin Center to the Moody Center is going to be, hopefully instrumental in terms of changing the basketball atmosphere. I think we all know what the football atmosphere looks like when we're good. But I think that, really the few times that the Irwin Center was packed when, Kevin Durant was around, when TJ Porter was around, when basketball was, playing well, I think that translates really well to a more intimate atmosphere. And hopefully that adds, 1 or 2 wins to kind of that conference schedule. So I think expectations for the basketball team are, at least third in the conference this year. I don't know why they couldn't get up to 2 or 1. KU, to your point, losing Agbaji, losing David McCormick. They've got new guys coming in. You look
Christian
at Baylor,
Brown too.
Christian Brown's playing on an NBA roster. Baylor is still going to be very good. Ultimately, I think that's probably my pick to win the conference this year. You look at guys like Thamba coming back, Keontae George coming back, LJ Cryer coming back. Flagler seems like he's been there
Flagler's still
forever,
there.
right? Like
Yeah.
those guys are well coached with Scott Drew, and they returned a lot of experience. But I don't know why it can't be, Texas and Baylor here and kind of KU maybe right here in terms of like what they have returning. And then, yeah, I mean, I don't really want to talk about Tech, but they've got a good coach, and even losing, McCullough to KU, and having some transfers go out, they're going to play good defense and be kind of a challenge for the conference too. And then you look at TCU, they squeaked one out last night, but that's a good basketball team that's extremely well coached as well with Jamie there. So I still think that we can be, a top 3 team in this league though this year. And I think that sets you up for, a 3 or 4 seed, which is a little bit different kind of than that 6 seed positioning that we got last year in the tournament. And ultimately that's what makes you play at Purdue in the second round. And that makes it a lot tougher to get to the state. So.
Exactly. Thank you for adding those anecdotes there. I think Baylor, if you're a Baylor fan right now, you have national championship type expectations, Final Four type expectations with that roster, the way North Carolina does. There's only a handful of teams that I think legitimately at the beginning of the season can say that's our expectation. I think Baylor is just a tier above at that point. But what I'm saying is get to the Elite Eight, make it happen, that's where magic can start to happen for you.
Right.
Colin, thanks for the basketball piece. Hell of a conference. We got people like Mike Miles, like you said at TCU, so many great players in this conference. I think Big 12 basketball is the best basketball conference in America in college. And you can fight me, debate me on that. And I think it's going to be a hell of a year, just like it was last year, just like it was the year before. Go look at the recent national champions and the people that have been in the Final Four and grab a clue. Yep. So as we transition, I got my Texas football hat way of Last Stand Hats. Hit up laststandhats.com/fanatic perspective. Guys, we have a promo code as well, Fanatic10. Fanatic10 is the promo code. And what that'll get you is 10% off at checkout. I'm actually rocking one right here. You can see that there. Some of the teams we mentioned, especially in the state of Texas, like a TCU, who we are getting ready to talk about football-wise, they are also on Last Stand Hats. So if you want to get some Horned Frog gear, SMU up here in Dallas, they're actually coming out. Those of you guys who are maybe Texas State alum, they're coming out with some old school Southwest Texas gear as well. Last Stand Hats just continues to grow. Great company, Texas supported. We got everything here. We're ready to talk Texas football. So hit up laststandhats.com/fanatic perspective and use that Fanatic10 promo code, 10% off at checkout. Support your boy. Support small business, y'all. Now, Colin, we finally won a road game. Sark finally got it done. Now it was the scores in terms of what we produced were literally identical to Oklahoma State. So that bothers me a little bit. 31 in the first half, 3 points in the second. Yeah. But winning is paramount. Winning is everything. And they won the game. They are now 6-3. Like we said at the top, we're waiting playoff metrics to come out. And the reason why that's significant, not that Texas is looking at the playoffs, but TCU coming into this game, year one under Sonny Dykes, 9-0, coming into DKR. College game day is there, Colin. Colin goes to every game. Colin, you're going to be there on Saturday, right?
Yeah, I have missed, I think, maybe a total of 5 total home games since I was born. I've been fortunate to see the stadium change a bunch and see a lot of great players come through. So I'm pumped to be there on Saturday.
So exactly, he's going to be there. He's always there, and I think Colin. The Bama game was cool. It was great atmosphere. We actually hung out a little bit before Bama, but that was at 11 a.m., right? And we returned at 11 a.m. We did great. We are getting now the signature night game. And I think I think last week was Sark's best win as a head coach when you look at his 11 wins at Texas. This one, though, and going to the playoff point, TCU is right now in prime position. They control their destiny for the college football playoffs. they're either going to be ranked 4 or 5 tonight. And we can debate if a one-loss Tennessee is going to be ranked ahead of them after the Georgia game or whatever. But the point is, TCU is right there, and they're going to bump Texas up. Last week, we were 24. We just got a win over a top 15 Kansas State team. So we'll probably be in that 17, 18 range, maybe high. I don't know. Yep. TCU is looking for a win over. So this game means so much, and it's the Gary Patterson game. So there's so many things going on here. We got game day here, Colin. How excited are you for this opportunity? We just talked about, Colton Bassett coming on board. Anthony Hill will be there. Javian Toviano will be there. Yep. I think I just heard Peyton Bowen is going to be there. Like this is one of the most significant games that I can think of in conference that's not OU related in a long, long time. Colin, what say you?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. You kind of look back in maybe the last 10 years and you think about notable night games that we've had. And it's funny because neither one, I think, are wins for us. So you go back and you look at the Cal game where Gerard just went absolutely nuts, and then
which was also Sonny Dykes.
And then and then you go back and look at the West Virginia game against Geno Smith, which I think was as well, a 6:30 kickoff late in conference. Or maybe it was a little bit earlier in conference, but I think both teams were maybe 1 or 2 losses at the time, and that West Virginia team went on to do some good things. The atmosphere is just different. It's different than an 11 a.m. game. The adults and, the college students have time to do whatever they'd like during the day and get themselves into the stadium with plenty of time to continue those festivities, and just makes it a more electric atmosphere. I think DKR at night is a lot of fun. Now that the stadium is closed off, the noise, I think, is going to be just a lot more than maybe it's been in the past. I think a lot of folks like to say that Texas is a country club type program and fan base. And ultimately, when we're good and things are rolling, I don't think there are that many louder places to go see football games with the amount of people we kind of pack in there and the amount of people who care about it. So I'm pumped not only for, us to go up against the TCU, who's going to be, to your point, top 5 opponent, whether it's in the AP rankings or the college football rankings, and kind of see where we're at. I think the talent's there. I think that should show, the recruits that, this ultimately is where we want to be. I think we're still lacking at depth in, a few positions. It's something that we talk about all the time. But I think we have the scheme offensively, and ultimately the defense, despite what anyone would write on a message board or write on Twitter, has improved significantly from last year to this year. And ultimately it's year 2 for Sark. So all we want to see is up and to the right in terms of progression on those charts and those rankings. And I think that's where we are right now. There are things to talk about on the other side for sure, but we have some really great momentum right now.
I do think, though, with the defense starting there, especially with Gary Patterson a part of this matchup, and the job he's done, I think he's been a tremendous help. And the thing, though, is as in the Texas fan base, it's gone kind of overdrive. And this week, you know what? This week is about Gary, y'all. It's no secret. But it's on both ends. Texas fans, you must realize, as much as Gary wants to get that win over his former employer, as much as Chris Del Conte wants to get that win over his former employer, TCU returns 80% of their starters from that 5-7 team last year. And you don't think that those kids feel some type of way about Gary even though Gary got fired, deciding not to finish the season. There's going to be heat coming both ways. And it's a very emotional game. Shoot, Jared Wiley's over there. Jared Wiley, I'm sure, wants some blood too. There's heat coming both ways. But I do think defensively, this team has not gotten enough credit in terms of where our expectations were as fans coming into the season versus the product that they've put on the field. I'm not saying that they've been lights out. We know what their weaknesses are. They get cooked sometimes. However, this is almost a night and day turnaround by Pete Kwiatkowski. Say his name, y'all. PK is the defensive coordinator. In title, he is the one calling the defense. He and Jeff Choate have done an amazing job with Jalen Ford. They've done an amazing job with Bo Davis at that interior defensive line. They deserve credit, okay? It's okay to give Pete Kwiatkowski credit. Stop trying to fire this man every angle you guys get to. Colin, I'm sorry to go on a rant right there. I needed to get that out my system, though. Forgive me.
Yeah, it's important, man. Like when you look at like they said, the difference between last year, I had to look it up, but we were giving up over 31 points a game. That was 99th out of 130 teams in FBS. This year, we're giving up 21.8 points a game. That's 38th out of 131 teams. So you can't really sit there and say Gary Patterson is the reason solely that the Texas defense went from being basically one of the worst in all of college football last year to, a top 40 defense. I think you look at Bo Davis and you look at that interior defensive line specifically, we texted about it, but seeing, Keandre Coburn come off and make the game winning play yesterday or last weekend was just, it just makes, I think, fans happy because that interior defensive line last year was a mess. When people were saying that Byron Murphy is the best player on that defensive line, I'm sure ticked off Keandre Coburn, ticked off Devondre Sweat. And these guys have played themselves into a significant amount of money going into next year. So you got to be really happy for those guys. And then, you look at the linebacking core, and it is another position that is extremely thin in terms of depth. But you look at DeMarvion, and you look at, Jalen Ford. And Jalen Ford is probably, if there was a most improved college football player, I don't know why he wouldn't be up for, that finals list for what he's done in terms of conference play and throughout the season. He's a tackling machine, which is something that we lacked last year. He seems to put, his head on the football, causes, turnover type plays, whether we actually pick up a fumble or not. I don't know what the fumble gods are doing to us this year, but as well as just making interceptions. Like, I could be wrong, but I think he has more interceptions than the rest of the defensive back maybe combined. He may have one less than the entire, defensive back.
You might need to do an Umlang stat check on that. Year. Let us know in the comments what that number is as you guys are chiming in. I know y'all love to correct. So let us know in the comments.
I know Watts has. I know Watts has one. I know Jahdae Barron's got one, and I know Jalen Ford has at least two. So somebody else needs to find one of those for me. But it's been great just seeing those guys improve. And to your point, there are things that need to be improved on in terms of the back end, in terms of, the pass rush off the edge, not letting guys just cross us over the field over and over and over again. But ultimately, what you wanted to see again for this defensive unit as a whole is improvement. And ultimately, that's what they've done this year. So, moving the goalposts based on how the year's going for your expectations always gets tricky. So ultimately, I have complaints about it every once in a while, but they've significantly improved from last year to this year.
They have. And I mean, look, now with all of that being said, they're going to have their hands full matchup wise with TCU and TCU's ability, their size on the outside of receiver. This is one of the bigger physical groups we've seen. And they have a lot of dynamic guys, whether they're coming out of the backfield, whether they're working out of the slot. You have a very improved Max Duggan, who, they went with Chandler Morris to start the year, and Max Duggan came in there as a veteran and has just been flying under Garrett Riley and Sonny Dykes. And this is a well-coached offense. Look, Garrett Riley is one of the hot names right now in college football. What he does in the run game, throw game, I was very impressed just watching him on film in the red zone. Some of the things they do a lot of things that Sark does. in terms of those wheel routes with their back out of the backfield, the rails that they do with their running back, what they do in motion with Tay Barber. There's going to be a lot for us to defend and a lot of challenges that get presented. I think one of the keys we got to have is what we had last week, disruption. Keep swiping at that football. These mobile quarterbacks, yeah, they move around a lot, but like you guys saw with Adrian Martinez, they were able to knock the ball out several times. Keep the disruption high. Hey, they might go on a 60, 70-yard drive, but you can always knock the football out and create disruption and create turnovers, create chaos. Because going to the offensive side, I think everybody in college football has been impressed with how Sark prepares his scripts, play design, jumping on an opponent. I look at the first 5 minutes of Kansas State, no disrespect, but I'm like, we are bigger, stronger, faster, more physical. Like we are whooping this team's ass. Our quarterback is getting whatever he wants. Our runners are going, Bijan's running all over him. Roshan's getting, like, Jatavian Sanders, people are bouncing off of him. Zay is running by people. Where do you see where we're losing this in the second half? And is that a concern for you even coming back home to DKR?
Yeah, it's one of those sinking feelings now. I think we all have PTSD as Texas Longhorn football fans going to the second half with big leads. And I think that stemmed from OU last year and then just kind of continued up until, last Saturday. But ultimately, it kind of was a sigh of relief seeing, Keandre knock the ball out, Jalen get on it. It was almost like, I can't believe that we're going to kneel this game out.
So what? We're in victory formation?
Yeah, it was. That was a huge sigh of relief. But, I think, Sark did a good job this week in his press conference talking a little bit about it in terms of, we seem to get a little unwound, especially at the start of the second half with penalties. And so once we kind of get behind the down and distance, and teams are, if you're up 21, they likely know the safer route is going to be you running the ball to the guy who has, the sixth most rushing yards in the country, right? So as soon as you start to put 8, 9 guys in the box, it's really hard to run against. It doesn't matter how improved your offensive line is. Shout out to Coach Flood, because that has been monumental from last year to this year too. Both run and pass blocking has been just, it's not talked about enough. And the offensive line, typically you don't talk about unless they're just horrible. So no talking about the offensive line has been just fantastic this year. But, once you can kind of key in on those things, people are, collegiate coaches aren't stupid. If they know that you're going to be really conservative in the second half and run the ball a bunch, they're going to put 8, 9 guys in the box. And as soon as you, false start on first down, you're 1st and 15, that makes it really hard to get first downs and kind of keep those drives sustained without asking your freshman quarterback not to make, hopefully a game-changing mistake, whether it's throwing pick six or, getting hit blindside or whatever else it is.
So Colin, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. So with the box thing, because one thing that a lot of people have been sending me messages saying, hey, does Quinn Ewers have the ability to audible out of these boxes, right? Like you see some of these quarterbacks. And to me, I think that Quinn Ewers right now, because I don't think he played bad at all. I think it was just he can only do what he's allowed to do. I'll put it that way.
Right.
And
exactly.
I think right now, Steve Sarkisian looks at Quinn Ewers as a very talented player that allows him to open up his run game because of his special arm. And you're going to run my plays, but you're not running the offense. There is a difference. And I want to tell people this. There's a difference between knowing the plays and running the plays, knowing how to work primary. Okay, high-low concept, coming through, okay, boom, I'm going to hit my shallow, to what Bryce Young does at Alabama, where he is running the offense. He is problem-solving at the line of scrimmage. He hears a play, and he's like, the defense changed their look. Okay, let me fix the play right now. Quinn Ewers, I do not believe Quinn Ewers even has he's even allowed to do that just yet. Now, he's only been at Texas for 11 months. So he's only been in the offense for 11 months. He's been a starter for X amount of games. I do think that over some time, that's where his growth really needs to come, more than the physical, more than the physical and all that stuff is just reps. But for him, I think year over year, he's going to have to take ownership of the offense, because I think that can help alleviate a lot of the challenges we see in the second half. And like you said, when we're one unbalanced, all these pre-snap things go away all of a sudden, because we're able to have a more formidable look for our team. So that's my 2 cents there. I just wanted to add that in, because I know people are going to comment and say, well, the quarterback can just change the play. It's not, like Lee Corso says, not so fast, my friend. Not so fast.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a question. If on, that 3rd and 3 or whatever that we lined up on, if we just gotten a first down, we probably could have, gone and ended the game at K-State last weekend. You think he wanted to run a pitch to the field side with 3 safeties sitting there?
No.
If he had control, I don't think he runs that play, because if I'm sitting there and I am not nearly a good enough athlete to play collegiate quarterback, but mentally I'm sitting there and there's 9 guys up in the box, and I've got Jatavian Sanders, and I've probably got Xavier Worthy one-on-one against some guy who can run probably whatever route he wants to, and a Jaleel Billingsley who could probably run across the field against the linebacker. I'd probably like to throw a little play action and zip the ball wherever I want, because I have an NFL arm, And I just don't think, to your point, it's the trust is there yet. And yeah, he's been here 11 months. He's basically the same age as every other, true freshman collegiate football player in America. Not only that, but he's had to miss 3 games. So
good point.
You kind of add all of those things up.
That slowed down his development too.
To having the keys to the Ferrari that, Bryce Young has at Alabama. And I'm sure Saban would even want him to have more control over watching, some of the plays that Bill O'Brien runs out in Tuscaloosa for him. So, I think it's a timeline process, and ultimately he gets there, but I just don't think he's there yet.
And so I think as a staff, that's why it's if Sark is going to say, hey, I'm going to kind of be conservative with the player in those situations, you have to be at your best as a play caller. You have to be at your best, finding the right personnel, or even if it's just, hey, I want to run this play, but I need to put some more window dressing on it, something to get these people out of the box. Like, we know what you want to do, and we've been having these debates on Twitter Spaces as well. Hey, at the end of the day, whether you believe it's more execution related, whether you believe it's more coaching related, Texas, this kind of goes into the mentality as a whole in a program at a macro perspective of how do you handle success? Because that's always been our concern as Texas fans. And at a micro level, it's literally happening within the game. We go, we're up 31-10. Jatavian Sanders is silencing the crowd, which I love. I like being the bad guy. Shut the hell up, K-State.
Yeah.
I love this. We want swagger, right? But then it's like, oh, we don't throw the ball to the guy for a whole quarter, right? Like, all of us, how do you handle success? I think that mirrors in your play calling. I think that mirrors in your preparation as a staff throughout the week. Are we prepared to be up 3 touchdowns? And how are we executing from there? So those are some things, because if Texas fixes that, you're winning the Big 12. I'm okay saying that now. Yeah. If they can fix those things, they can win the whole conference. It's right there in front of you. I have not seen one opponent this year, including Alabama, where we did not look like we were even or above physically. Please show me who's just beaten me this year. Who's just flat out come on the field and just beaten me? Nobody.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't look at any opponent on the schedule. You can't look at any loss on the schedule and say that team was just so much significantly better than this football team, both schematically, coaching wise across the board, or just in terms of pure talent. There's not one team on this schedule that's that way. And I don't think there's one team in these last 3 games that's that way. It's going to be a mentality thing, which we have not had since 2009, which is we are the University of Texas and we're going to go out and we're just going to beat you. And it doesn't matter, how much we're up in the second half, doesn't matter what we're down in the first half. We're just going to go win the game. And to your point, it is about those micro things within the game that they need to get over. I hope that's what happened at K-State. You need to prove it to me. You need to prove it to you. You need to prove it to the rest of the Texas fan base. This week, the week after, and the week after, because ultimately, the door is open for you to go do it. And that's all we can ask, and hopefully that's what they can deliver. But I think they're still in the prove it period.
Colin Camphy, final thoughts, man. Thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. What are your final thoughts? What's your closing take, man?
Closing take. Okay, I'll set some expectations. One, appreciate you having me on the show. It's been a long time in the making. Football wise, I'll say we win 2 out of the next 3 games. I'm not gonna pick and choose which ones. Those are in my head right now. I think we have 1 letdown, but I do still think that we make the Big 12 championship game. So I think, ultimately, I'll say it. We beat Baylor. We squeaked by TCU, and for some reason, we lose to Kansas at home, which I don't want it to happen, but it's been in my head for like the last 3 weeks. And yeah, Brad Kellner will enjoy that take for some reason or another. But and then basketball, I'll pick us to finish second in the conference, and hopefully we can keep these conversations going. But I'll take a 3 seed, and shout out to the women's basketball program too for going to the Elite Eight the last 2 years.
Absolutely.
Let's say we go to the Elite Eight as a 3 seed this year.
Yeah, no, Vic Schaefer and that program, they are setting the pace over there, and those ladies are deep.
Doing great.
Credit to those ladies. They've all been ahead of schedule. The young women that have come in, we know they've had some girls transfer in and out of the program, but they've set the standard there. And I think the ladies playing at Moody are even going to be better, right? So,
but the women's volleyball program and the women's basketball program are both the standard that football and basketball on the men's side should be shooting toward.
Look, that's the passion you guys get from a passionate alum who's there every sporting event supporting this team, every single one he can get to. And Colin, we will have Colin on, especially throughout basketball season, and we will have him on before the end of the Big 12. This is my good buddy. We talk ball all the time, as y'all can tell. So, again, shout out to the homies, Austin, Brother Smee out there. We see y'all. We recognize y'all. Y'all are acknowledged, including Brother Elijah as well. We see all you guys out there. All right.
Michael Smeehausen's 33rd birthday today.
Happy birthday, Smee.
Shout out for them, man.
Yeah. Wow. Happy birthday, Smee. You see, I'm a terrible friend. I got to get the birthdays locked in the phone, bro, or else happy birthday, Smee. We love you, brother. Shout out to Last Stand Hats, laststandhats.com. Great birthday present. Somebody out there that's a Texas fan, TCU fan, Oklahoma State fan, whatever. Laststandhats.com/fanatic perspective. Use that promo code Fanatic10. All right. Fanatic10 at checkout, 10% off at checkout. And for our friends in the betting community, you already know what it is. Shout out to BSR.com/fanatic, the official sports book, the official betting partner of Fanatic Perspective. There's still some great futures bets that are out there. NBA, Heisman betting updated, conference championship bets updated. I know a lot of folks that may not want to bet the spread or over under on every game, more interested in futures bets or player prop bets. We have all of that available for you. 24/7 customer service, best in the business. We appreciate it. But, Longhorn Nation, for our family out there, y'all know what it is. Horns always up. Peace.